Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 15 of Uzumaki Naruto, Birth of the New Demon King. If you guys enjoyed this what if, and want to see part 16 of it, comment down below, and let me know. The like goal for this video is 200 likes. So like this video, to let me know that you're interested in this series, and you want the next part. Check out my new videos of My Hero Academia what ifs in my second channel, and give it some love as well. Link is in the description. And go ahead, and check out other what ifs in the channel. Before we start, please do support for more awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. So you failed to capture the Kyuubi Jinchuriki? Asked Pain, his voice holding no emotion, though many of the members were sure he was displeased. Not only that, but he somehow managed to kill Hidan. He was using some kind of weird chakra that I've never seen before, Kasame said, giving his input on the matter. When I tried to let Samehada eat it, his chakra actually damaged it. I see. He was also far stronger than we thought he was, Itachi added in his emotionless tone. He managed to fight off all four of us without much effort, and killed Hidan, by vaporizing his entire body. Pain turned to a man who looked like he had been swallowed by a large plant. Were you at least able to retrieve the ring? No, Leader Sama, Hidan's entire body was destroyed, the plant said, his voice switching from a light tone to a more evil one and back again. There wasn't anything left of him, not even ashes. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki is stronger than we had assumed. This is going to be a problem. Shall we go after him again? Asked Kakazu. No, Pain shook his head. Without knowing how powerful he is, we would just be wasting resources. We'll start searching for the other Biju and Jinchuriki before moving on to the Kyuubi. In the meantime, I want a portion of our spy network dedicated to learning everything we can about the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. All of the members agreed, not like they could do anything else since Pain was the one in charge. One by one the images began to flicker out, leaving only Pain, Konan and the masked man known as Madara. It seems he is going to be more trouble than we first thought, Madara commented lightly. Perhaps Pain conceded. However, this is merely a setback. Should he become too much of a problem, I will go after him myself. Then he will face the will of God. Very well, see to it that you do not underestimate him. As Madara vanished, Pain narrowed his eyes at where the man had been. Soon, Madara, I will not have to listen to you, he said, though only Konan was around to hear him. And you shall know the pain of what happens when you try to control me. You will face the wrath of God. Birth of the New Demon King. Kyuubi gave a gratifying sigh as she rode another wave of pleasure caused by the blonde above her. As her orgasm diminished, the redhead leaned up and kissed Naruto for all he was worth. Their tongues dueled, and it was only oxygen became an issue that they let up. Smiling at him, she said, "We're going to need to get up soon." "I know," Naruto said as he looked out the window. Sunlight was beginning to stream in, small rays of light that hit the bed, and a few that were getting dangerously close to his eyes. He sighed. "It's too bad, we didn't even get to test the full limits of our stamina." "Speak for yourself," Kyuubi thought with a sweat drop. While she had been able to keep up with him for this long, Kyuubi knew she would have dropped if Naruto decided to go another round. Just how much stamina did Naruto have? The others will probably be getting up soon. Getting himself off of Kyuubi and out of bed, Naruto stretched himself out, smiling widely as he heard his bones crack. He looked back at Kyuubi, who was just beginning to sit up, smiling as he held a hand out. "We should probably take a shower, so we don't smell of sex." "Well, I am feeling a tad dirty," Kyuubi said, grinning as she took Naruto's hand and let him help her up. "Are you going to help me get clean, Naruto-sama?" Standing up, she winced a little as a small pain jolted between her thighs. She took a step forward, only to stumble and fall as her legs gave out on her. Naruto quickly caught her, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her closer to her. "Hey, you alright?" asked Naruto, frowning a little as he felt her body give out on him. "I'm fine, Naruto-sama," Kyuubi said. He felt her try to stand again, but already knew it would end in failure. He could feel her entire body shaking against him. "No, you're not fine," Naruto frowned. Acting quickly, he slid one arm under her legs and the other around her shoulder, sweeping her into his arms, and cradling her like a babe. Looking more closely, he could see her eyes were drooping closed. "You're exhausted," he sighed. "Haim, why didn't you tell me you were getting tired?" She hadn't even given him an indication she was tired. I didn't want to disappoint you," she mumbled, her eyes closed and her head falling onto his shoulder. Naruto's frown grew rather prominent, before he closed his eyes. "Idiot." "Ha." Kyuubi opened her eyes to look at Naruto in blurry confusion. "You're such an idiot," Naruto mumbled as he leaned his head down and nuzzled it against her own. Frowning a little, Naruto closed his eyes in concentration and focused his Yaki. He molded it, imagining it taking shape before releasing it in a single small burst. Opening his eyes, he watched as the reddish-black energy flew off of his body and landed in front of him. It began to morph and take shape, twisting and growing, gaining 4 appendages, 2 arms and 2 legs before gaining a head. Once the general outline of the energy took on a human form, it began to solidify until a perfect copy of Naruto stood in front of him. Already having its orders, the clone proceeded to the bathroom. Soon the sound of water could be heard from inside. You've gotten better at controlling your Yaoki, Kyuubi mumbled with a small proud smile on her face. Naruto chuckled, a rumbling sound that emitted deep in his chest, and made Kyuubi relax against him. I had a good teacher, he said lightly as he sat down on the bed and sat down. He placed Kyuubi on his lap, and began stroking her hair, a grin making its way to the blonde's face. After the invasion I had made a couple thousand clones outside of Konoha, and finished the next exercise you had given me. Oh? Kyuubi had given Naruto a set of exercises to complete in case her time in Makai had lasted longer than they both expected. Which one did you complete? The one where I had to balance my on a needle with my Yaoki, Naruto said, frowning as he remembered the exercise. Where I have molded my Yaoki to a finely honed point on the tip of my finger, then create a flat plane under the needle, so that it doesn't sink into the ground at some point, while trying to hold my weight. Ah, Kyuubi said, yawning. That's not bad at all. You only have 5 more to go then. She giggled. Though even with 5,000 Kage Bunshin these next ones are going to take a few years to complete. So you've told me, he said dryly, not needing a reminder of just how hard the next series of exercises were supposed to be. Do you always have to remind me? Yes. Naruto rolled his eyes as he continued running his hand through her hair. Having been keeping an ear open to listen, he heard when the water was cut off. A second later the blonde's clone came in, grumbling about how lazy his creator was. Said Original snickered, making the clone glare at him. The tub is full, asshole. Thank you, Naruto said with a small smirk. He didn't know why, but he had begun finding pleasure in pissing off and antagonizing his clones when they weren't training. Maybe it was because they were all a bunch of disrespectful little shits. If they are, then what does that say about me? Whatever, prick, Kage Bunshin, Naruto mumbled, snapping the blonde out of his thoughts. Naruto snickered as he stood up with the now sleeping Kyuubi in his arms. Stick around, he called out to his clone while walking into the bathroom. I may need you in a little while. The door closed behind the blonde, leaving the clone to sit on the well-used bed and grumble. You clones have never gotten along, Kyuubi mumbled as Naruto walked over to the bathtub. It was filled with water, hot enough that a light steam was rising from it. Naruto knelt down and gently placed the red head in the water, letting her head rest on the towel laying on the lip of the tub. Kyuubi sighed in content as she let the warm water seep into her skin. This is nice. Naruto chuckled as he grabbed a sponge and began to wash Kyuubi. I like to say my clones and I just have a special relationship. Kyuubi snorted. Yeah, special. Let's go with that. Ha. Letting herself relax so completely, Kyuubi actually felt like she could fall asleep, and she might have had it not been for Naruto's attentive and gentle hands as he washed her. She couldn't help but love how tender the blonde's touch was. He not only washed her, but messaged the sore parts of her body that had gotten sore from their 8-hour sexathon. The last part of her the blonde washed was her hair. When he finished cleaning her, Naruto pulled the plug on the drain and wrapped a towel around the red head before lifting her up. He carried her back into the bedroom where the clone was sitting on the bed meditating. The copy ignored its creator and Kyuubi as Naruto set her down on the bed and dried her off. How are you feeling? He asked. Tired, Kyuubi admitted, but good as well. I could get used to this. Naruto just chuckled as he finished drying her off and placed his maid under the covers. So you like when I take care of you, Kyuubi-hime? Asked Naruto with a teasing grin. And here I thought you were supposed to be taking care of me. Kyuubi stuck her tongue at the blonde, causing him to snicker a bit before caressing her cheek. Get some sleep. You can pick up kin in a few hours. I've got to meet my team, I'm sure they're awake by now. Okay, Kyuubi mumbled, her exhaustion having finally caught up with her as she jumbled words together. Naruto watched as her breathing slowed down to signify she had fallen asleep. He leaned down, kissed her forehead, before standing back up. Keep an eye on her, he said to his clone. And when she leaves, go to Konoha and inform Toussaint of what he needs to know. I got it, the clone said, waving the blonde off. The blonde copy wondered why its creator always insisted on giving them vocal commands when it already knew what he wanted. He was more or less talking to himself, so it wasn't as if the Kage Bunshin couldn't understand the blonde just as well as Naruto could understand himself. That was one of the many oddities of the Kage Bunshin technique. Each clone was a perfect copy of Naruto, it had half of his power, and could use all of the techniques the blonde could. If they focused, the clones could even see through the eyes of the original and vice versa. And yet despite this, each clone was also distinctly different from their creator and each other. Because they were individuals could think and act for themselves, they sometimes thought differently than Naruto despite being copies of the original. It was something both Naruto and his clones wondered about from time to time, but they never cared enough to dwell on the subject. Naruto nodded and walked out the door, closing it behind him. Turning around, he was about to make his way down the hall to rouse his team, only to find that they were already awake. Hey you three. He greeted cheerfully. I'm glad you're all awake. He trailed off as he got a good look at them. Are you guys alright? You guys look kind of tired. The blonde's words were something of an understatement. Hana, Shikamaru, Shino and the three Ninkin with Hana all looked dead on their feet. Their eyes were bloodshot, and they had black bags under them. The Himera Sankidai had their ears drooping, and the three humans were swaying ever so slightly on their feet. They had definitely seen better days. You guys look like you've stayed up all night. At the blonde's words, a tick mark formed on the heads of the three Konoha ninja as they glared at him. Why are you guys glaring at me like that? The glares only seemed to intensify. Did I do something wrong? Guys. Hey. Where are you going? He asked when the three abruptly turned and began walking away. Wait up. Guys. Birth of the New Demon King. As the four Konoha ninja left the town, 7 other people were watching them. Is it him? Yes. The blonde one, right? That's the son of Namikaze. Yes. Finally. We'll have our revenge. Yes. Soon, Minato Namikaze shall suffer just as he caused us to suffer. Let us see how he likes it when he's the one losing the people he loves most. Birth of the New Demon King. One day later, the light began streaming through the windows in the hospital. Small rays of sunlight struck the bed, prompting Tsuchi-kin to wake up as the light hit her eyes. Opening them, Kin blinked several times before letting out a shriek as ruby-red eyes stared back at her. Hello, Kyuubi said brightly, finding a small level of amusement in the surprise she had caused in the girl. Who are you? Asked Kin, looking slightly freaked. How long had this girl been here? And who was she? While Kin was no censor, she was fairly good at knowing when other people are near her. Having lived in Oto for most of her teen life, learning to tell when someone was within her personal bubble was something of a necessity. That this girl could get completely past this small space, where her sixth sense could detect everything, was astonishing. I came all this way to escort you back to Konoha, and you don't even know who I am, Kyuubi huffed, crossing her arms under her chest. This had the effect of pushing the redhead's breasts up, an action which Kin noticed. The dark-haired girl's eyes traveled to Kyuubi's bust, which was both one of largest and most firm she had ever seen. Granted, living in a village like Oto, she could admit to have not seen many women, as most missing ninja kunoichi stay away from the village due to Orochimaru's disreputable character and reputation for being untrustworthy. But that didn't make much of a difference to Kin, who couldn't help but stare at the woman's breasts. See something you like, dear? Asked Kyuubi, raising an eyebrow. Kin blinked as her eyes went from the beautiful woman's breast to her eyes. She blinked in surprise several more times before the words registered in her ears. When they did, Kin blushed, her face taking on a deep red hue. Even her ears and neck began to turn red. If she gained any more color, Kin was sure her head would spontaneously combust. Kyuubi actually snickered a little as she watched the girl's face turn red. Now, if you're done staring at my chest, perhaps we could get a move on, and I can take you to Konoha. Naruto-sama wants me to get you there within the next few days. It took a few seconds, but at hearing the name of the man who had rescued her, Kin managed to get her blush under control. She looked at Kyuubi for a second as her mind registered the title the redhead had given to the blonde. Naruto-sama. The honorific the woman had used made Kin pause. The use of suffixes had long been a tradition in the elemental nations. While some had disregarded the practice in the last 50 years or so, most still use them. The use of the sama suffix often referred to one of a much higher rank than others. Usually, people who were of royalty or noble status, the leaders of a village such as a kage or mayor, were the ones who were called by such a respectful honorific. The redhead's use of the sama suffix surprised her, mainly because Naruto was not royalty as far as she knew. It meant the redhead, who Kin had actually assumed was royalty herself because of her beauty and magnificent warrior-like outfit, held a great amount of respect for the blonde. That is what you will be calling him as well, Kyuubi said, standing up from the seat she had taken. She tossed the raven-haired girl a pair of simple black pants, black shirt and a beige traveling poncho with a hood over it. Kin grabbed the clothes, blinking as she examined the fabrics. They were unlike anything she had ever seen. The fabric was so soft, and felt almost like silk to touch. Yet at the same time she could feel how sturdy it was. She wasn't sure what they were, and while she didn't have much of a fashion sense, she could tell these clothes were above the quality of anything else she was likely to find. The fabric of those clothes are very special, Kyuubi said, directing the young girl's attention from the clothing to her. Not only are they nearly indestructible, but on the off chance that you do get any rips or tears in them, channeling your chakra through them will fix these right up. The clothes had actually been commissioned by Naruto before he had left for the human world, after his training in Makai had finished. When he had first gone to Hiseki and asked for him to make clothing that relied on chakra to fix it, rather than Yauki. It had been a surprising request, and not one Hiseki would have normally taken, mainly because like most demons he had no love for humanity. However, when both the descendant of Ryzen and Kyuubi herself were the ones making the request, there was just no way he could say no. So cool, Kin muttered. Grabbing at the clothing she was about to begin putting it on, then she remembered Kyuubi standing beside her. She turned red in the face and was about to tell the redhead to leave. Only to blink when she saw that Kyuubi was already gone, the door shutting closed with a light click. Kin stared at the door for a few seconds longer before getting out of bed. She wobbled a little, having been comatose for nearly a week, and then confined to a bed for another few days. The level of physical fitness she had aspired to wasn't what it had been. Wincing a little, Kin used what strength she had to get dressed and then walked towards the door. Opening it, she saw Kyuubi standing on the other side, arms crossed and tapping a foot against the floor. When she noticed Kin was ready, she raised an eyebrow and asked, "Ready?" Kin nodded and Kyuubi turned around. "Good, I was getting tired of waiting for you. Now let's go." Kin nodded again and followed Kyuubi to what would be her new life. Birth of the New Demon King. With Naruto. Tanzakugai. Naruto looked around Tanzakugai in interest. You definitely couldn't say it wasn't a lively town. The city was very large, with a wall surrounding it, and a large castle located on the south side. There were tons of adults, mainly men, bustling around the entire city. This was because Tanzakugai was a city well known for its gambling parlors, casinos, pubs and women. One of the many pleasurable services the lucrative city possessed were the many beautiful women who worked at the bars and pubs in Tanzaku that offered themselves at a price. Naruto noticed that for every shop, restaurant or hotel, there was a brothel right next to it. It reminded Naruto of the red light district he lived in, except without the complete scum and high crime ratings. Okay, Shino. Do your thing. Naruto watched as his bug-using teammate began to discreetly send out his Kiichu bugs into the city. It would take somewhere around an hour for Shino to seed the whole city with his bugs, but once he had the Burame Era would be able to find and differentiate between all of the chakra signatures in Tanzakugai. Hana. Naruto said, turning to the Inizuka and her three ninkin. He gave her a scroll that he had grabbed from his pocket. That contains the article of clothing with Tsunade's scent. I believe you know what to do with it. Of course, Hana said while the Himeru Sankidai all barked and wagged their tails, as if agreeing with their partner. Grabbing the scroll, she unsealed the contents, which emitted a puff of smoke that soon cleared away. What kind of sick pervert would have a pair of Tsunade-sama's panties? Asked Hana as she held up a small purple thong, her eyebrows twitching violently. Erosenin, Naruto groaned, face palming. Of course, I should have known that damned pervert would have something like this. Blinking in confusion, the blonde had a thought occur to him. Wait a second, how in the hell did Erosenin even get these? Tsunade is known to be absurdly violent against perverts, and I heard she almost killed him once just for peeking on her. Who's this Erosenin? Asked Shino. Naruto turned to look at his Aburame teammate, blinking for a moment. Oh, his face gained a look of recognition. I forgot that you guys wouldn't know who he is. I was talking about Jiraiya. Wait, do you mean Jiraiya-sama? Asked Shikamaru, his eyes actually opening in shock. Of the Densetsu no Sennin. That's the one, Naruto replied dryly. He also happens to be the world's largest pervert and author of the Icha Icha Paradise books that Kakashi loves so much. The guy was such a large pervert that he had more or less abandoned his guts into the wolves that called themselves Konoha citizens, so he could peep on women in the hot spring and write his perverted novels. Though Naruto had to admit he liked the novels, they had given him many ideas that he and Kyuubi had tried during his 1-month training in Makai, and last night. I had not known he was the author of those books, Shino said. Since he is the sensei of your father, I assume you know him well, Uzumaki-san. Not really, Naruto said with a sigh. Aside from his perverted tendencies, the only two things I know about him are that he's my 2-cent sensei, and my Kyofu. Anyways, let's get going. Hana. Do you have a scent? I do, but it's muddled, Hana said. She looked at her 3 dogs. They were wagging their tails and barking as they sniffed the ground. After a few minutes of sniffing, they looked up at her and whined. Sighing, she shook her head. There are too many scents to properly follow it, and I think it's being masked by something. Like scent killers or something else. Right? Naruto sighed. This would make finding Tsunade that much harder. They could still find her using Shino's Kakeichu tracking, but that would take longer. Even if they could pinpoint the woman's location, finding her within such a large crowd would be difficult. Then there was the fact that even if they did, she could slip away entirely unnoticed. Naruto couldn't power his way through this kind of situation. There was no enemy to fight and overcome like with Orochimaru or his tangle with the 4S rank ninja at Atofujingai. Here it was all about stealth, intelligence gathering and recon. And Tsunade had 50 years experience in being a ninja over them. Though Naruto was still confident in his abilities to track her, while his skills may be a bit rusty as he had not pulled a prank, his talents in stealth were legendary among the Anbu. Uzumaki-san, I have found 2 strong chakra signatures, Shino informed everyone. He tilted his head, allowing a ray of sun to hit them. One is around the same level I felt from 3 of the ninja you faced, while the other is probably around the level of your average shonen. Lead the way, Naruto said, gesturing for Shino to take the lead. The bug-using shinobi led them all to a large gambling parlor. It was quite a bit more extravagant than the others in the area, with a large neon sign in front and flashing lights all around it. Truth be told, Naruto thought it looked pretty tacky, but who was he to complain? So this is the place. Shino nodded, yes. Alright, you guys know the plan, Naruto said. Shikamaru, create a parameter in case Tsunade tries to escape. Shino, you stay with Shikamaru. Leaning down, he grinned at the 3 dogs. I want you 3 to stay with them as well. Hana, you're with me. Hana blinked, what do you need me to be with you for? Birth of the New Demon King. A few days later. Konoha. I spy with my little eye. Ugh, not this again, Izumo groaned and held his hand in his face. Come on man, just knock it off. You've been trying to get me to play this game for hours already. It's not like there's anything better to do, Kotetsu complained. All we do is sit around here watching this stupid gate, and nothing ever happens around here. It's not like some dangerous S-rank ninja is going to be walking right in through the front gates or anything. You know, considering we just had an invasion a few weeks ago, I'm not sure you should be talking about something like that happening, Izumo said. You might jinx it. Jinx mix. No one in their right mind would attack us now, Kotetsu replied with certainty. I mean, not only did we come out of this invasion nearly unscathed save some cosmetic damage, but we also got our Yandere Hokage back. And we have his son. No one would be stupid enough to attack us. Hey, you alright man? Asked Izumo after his friend trailed off uncertainly. He looked at his friend whose eyes were glazed over. The spiky-haired man was also blushing and drooling like an idiot. Hey, Kotetsu. Kotetsu. Snap out of it man. Izumo snapped in front of Kotetsu's face, getting nothing more than a single blink. Excuse me. At hearing the very feminine and sensual voice, Izumo turned and found himself in the same stupor his partner was. Standing in front of him was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. With long red hair, ruby-colored eyes that were even more exotic than Kurenai's, luscious red lips, large, firm breasts, slim waist and mild long legs. She was everything a woman should be. I was hoping I could get signed in, the woman said, pointing towards the clipboard in Izumo's hand. That is what I need to do in order to enter Konoha, right? Right, Izumo said dumbly. Behind him Kotetsu nodded his head. Kyuubi smiled as she grabbed the clipboard from Izumo's numb grasp and began filling out the proper forms needed for 2 civilians entering Konoha. Once finished she handed the clipboard back to Izumo, who took it out of sheer instinct. Thank you, Kyuubi said, standing back up. She looked behind her. Come. The redhead walked past the 2 chunin in the guard booth, leaving the 2 guards in another stupor. The pair walked down the streets of Konoha, and everywhere Kyuubi went she attracted attention. The redhead just ignored it however, as she walked through the street and made her way towards the red light district. She was forced to stop as several thugs walked in front of her. Well, look at what we've got here, one of the men said with a lecherous grin. Kyuubi almost wrinkled her nose as she picked up the scent of alcohol on the men. The only stench stronger than sake was piss. Not an altogether pleasant thing to smell. What you doing around these parts, doll? You lost? Kyuubi rolled her eyes at the remark. No, I'm not lost. I know exactly where I'm going, but I can only get there if you fucktwards get lost. Ooh, looks like the chickie has some spirit. She wouldn't have it for very long. I say we take her into an alley and have some fun with her. Then we can have fun with her friend. Kin closed in behind Kyuubi and gripped her arm. Looking over at the dark-haired girl, she said, let go. I can't fight with these men with you clinging to me. Kin looked reluctant, but a glare from Kyuubi made her do as asked. The redhead turned back to the thugs and shot her glare at them. I hope you've enjoyed the life you've lived so far, because the moment you threatened me with rape they were forfeit. The thugs all looked at each other, confused. Hey, is this broad serious? Beats me. What can she do? Let's get her. As the men began running at her, Kyuubi smirked. Then she disappeared. Several flashes of light appeared around the men, too many to count and too many to see. Kyuubi reappeared a few seconds later, crouched down behind the men and her hand glowing with a sharp red energy. For a moment time seemed to stand still, not a soul moved nor dared breath. Then Kyuubi stood up and all of the men fell down, blood gushing out of the slash wounds she created on them. Smirking, she turned back to Kin and gestured for her. Come, we're almost to Naruto-sama's. Kin quickly caught up with the redhead and stuck close. Naruto-sama lives here, she asked in a hushed voice, as if just speaking out loud would bring more goons back. In a place like this? For the moment, yes, Kyuubi answered. Though not for long if she had anything to say about it. There was no way her mate, the descendant of someone she respected above all else, and as a person who held her respect himself, was going to be living in such a dump for long. If Naruto didn't end up moving himself, or getting his old man to find him a decent place to live, then she was going to get him a house. A nice mansion that would make even those Hyugas jealous. But for the moment getting Naruto out of this shithole would have to wait until later. She walked up to the door, which she had at least noticed looked better than when she had been sealed inside of her blonde mate, and knocked on the door. There was some shuffling from the inside before it opened and Naruto looked at her. Hey, Kyuubi Haim, he said with a grin as he opened the door all the way. I've missed you. He leaned in for a kiss, only to be met with her hand. Blinking he looked at as she gave him a smile. Narubunshin, as much as I love Naruto you're not really him, she said brightly. No offense, but I prefer the real thing. Okay. Huh. Kyuubi sweat dropped as she saw the Naruto clone crouched down in a corner of the room, with a rain cloud hanging over his head. She decided to ignore the now depressed Bunshin as Kin entered the room. Make yourself at home, while Narubunshin pulls himself back together. Okay. Kin said. She looked around the room, before sitting down on one of the couches. It was hard and lumpy, but she ignored that in favor of looking at her surroundings. There was another knock on the door that caused her to jump. The Naruto clone seemed to magically pull himself together at the knock and walked over to open the door, and Kin looked over when she heard several voices. "Hey Two-san, what's up?" A sigh came from whoever was at the door. "I hope you know how hard it was to accomplish this without anyone noticing. Are you telling me that the legendary Yondaime Hokage had trouble faking the death of a single girl?" asked Naruto. Kyuubi looked over at Kin when those words were said, and nearly lost it when she saw the wide-eyed, flabbergasted look on the raven-haired girl's face. She wondered if Kin was more shocked at hearing the Yondaime Hokage was alive, or if the Yondaime Hokage was Naruto's old man. "I'm beginning to think you don't appreciate just how much I'm doing for you. Consider this making up for 13 years of not being here." "Ugh, I should have figured you'd hold that over me." There was a pause. "She's at the new house I got for you." "You got me a house? Really? At least that means I don't have to buy a house for you," Narubunshin," Kyuubi said from her spot. At the sound of her voice, Minato walked around Naruto and over to her. He stopped just a few feet from her with an unreadable expression on his face. However, Kyuubi wasn't worried. Even if Minato decided to attack her, she could stop him. Now that she had a mating mark, it was impossible for her to be sealed, even if he summoned the Shinigami again to do it. "Kyuubi," Minato said after nearly a minute of silence. "Sachi had told me about you, and how you're more or less working with him as a partner." Given his choice of words, Kyuubi wondered if she knew just how close she and Naruto actually were. It was hard to tell, she had to admit. Minato had a mean poker face. "I want you to know that the only reason I'm trusting you is because my Sachi trusts you." "That's fine," Kyuubi said with a shrug. "Your trust isn't something I really care about. Naruto-sama's demon blood may be active, but yours is still so weak I can only feel it as a pinprick of energy. As I said to Naruto-sama, I don't really care for humanity. The only reason I am willing to even help out around here is because Naruto-sama sees more worth in keeping Konoha alive than seeing it decimated." Minato nodded as if having expected the remark. He turned back to Naruto and said, "We should get going now. I don't really like that you had to live in a dump like this, and I'm not going to let you stay here if I have any say about it. Right, and besides, we still have to reintroduce Kin to her long-lost friend," Naruto said. As everyone began leaving, Kin sat there blinking, wondering what the blonde meant by his words. "Come on, Kin." "Ah." Kin stood up and began running towards the door. "Wait up, I'm coming." Birth of the New Demon King. With Naruto, Tanzakugai. Naruto whistled as Hana walked out of the changing room of the small shop they had gone in a few minutes ago. Naruto had decided when he saw her that Hana was a rather attractive kunoichi. He may not have any interest in mating with the Inuzuka, nor did he feel the desire to be physical intimate with the woman, but there was no denying the woman's physical beauty. Like all kunoichi, she kept herself in great shape, and had the same hourglass figure many female kunoichi in their late teens to even their late 30s had. And while she wasn't as feral as her clan, there was still a distinct hint of ferocity and an alpha-like presence to her. However, with the black slinky spaghetti strap dress, which stopped just above mid-thigh, she looked even more attractive. She was also wearing a light amount of makeup, some red lipstick, and just a hint of purple eyeshadow and blush. Her hair was being worn down, instead of the ponytail, and it had a brilliant shine to it, thanks to the beauty parlor he had taken her to just a few minutes ago. "You, my dear, look absolutely stunning," Naruto complimented with a grin. It was nice seeing Hana's cheeks turn a lovely shade of red. Inuzuka women were not into showing off their feminine sides to anyone, and he doubted they were as crazy and feral as most rumors made them out to be. However, Naruto was sure that did not mean they neglected their own femininity, and Hana was much softer than the other Inuzuka he had seen. "Do you think so?" she asked, blushing as she looked at herself. Though she stayed in the same spot and her feet never left the ground, the way she moved her body and legs allowed the bottom of her dress to swish around, revealing more of her legs to Naruto. "Of course I do," Naruto said. He held his hands behind his back as he walked up to her. "If it weren't for the fact that you're Kiba's sister, I would probably take you right here." A chuckle escaped him as he saw Hana's blush turn an even more lovely shade of red. He sighed, "Alas, I must stick to the bro code, so the sister of a friend is off limits." He absently wondered if he could actually consider Kiba a friend. It was true that they had been the most similar in class. While Sasuke may have been his rival, it was Kiba who he competed against in the realm of pranking. It was something he would have to think about later, he supposed. Hana blinked at him, a sense of confusion passing through her eyes. "The what?" "Nothing for you to worry about," Naruto said dismissively. Running a hand through his hair, he looked himself over. For this mission, Naruto had chosen to wear a nice black tux with an orange tie. He had to admit that he looked rather good in a tux, even if wearing them felt constricting. He looked back at Hana and smiled. Holding out his arm, he said, "Shall we?" Hana looked at him for a moment before grabbing his arm. Together the two once again made their way to the gambling parlor Tsunade had been seen going. They had been staking out the place for 2 days, learning Tsunade's habits, and having Shikamaru come up with the best plan to capture her should convincing the woman to return prove fruitless, and she made an attempt to bolt. As he stared at the door to the gambling parlor, Naruto smiled. "You ready?" he asked the Onizuka female next to him. "As I'll ever be." Birth of the New Demon King. The room was dark, smoke was wafting through the air, emitting an acrid scent that cloyed at the throat. The smoke in the room was so thick that many actually had trouble seeing their hand in front of their face. This was the kind of room one would expect to find in a mob boss's hideout, where Yakuza members hung around, and did whatever the hell they felt like. Only this was no Yakuza hideout, this was a poker tournament. One of the highest caliber in which the amount of money being bet was enough to buy the city on the scale of 10 sakugai. Tsunade frowned as she looked at the cards in her hand. Like always, they weren't very good, one pair of 2s, a 5, a 9, and a jack. There wasn't much she could get with that kind of hand, and there was very little if any chance of her winning. Not like such a bad hand ever stopped her from playing anyways. "I'm all in, double or nothing," she said, pushing her nearly half of her chips into the pot. All around, the men she was betting against were laughing to themselves. Tsunade had truly proven herself to be the legendary sucker, the woman who never wins a bet of any kind. No one in their right mind would turn down a bet made by her. It was a guaranteed win for them. "Excuse me." Everyone turned at the sound of the voice. Entering the darkened room was a young man who looked to be around 18 years of age. He had long and wild-looking spiky blonde hair, blue eyes and lean features. He was rather attractive in Tsunade's opinion. But she had an itch that needed scratching at the moment. She might have even put the moves on him after the tournament. On his arm was a rather attractive young woman around the same age. She had lustrous brown hair and brown eyes with a hint of eyeshadow. Her dress accentuated her curves, though she looked more like an accessory to the centerpiece the blonde male represented. "Who are you?" asked one of the many gamblers that had been just about to accept Tsunade's double or nothing bet. "Can't you see we're in the middle of a game? Come back later, brat." "Aw, now don't be like that," the blonde male said in a condescending voice. He walked over to the table, and Tsunade watched as he placed a briefcase on it. Unlocking the latches, he opened the contents and spun it around. Tsunade's, along with the jaw of everyone else currently playing the high-stakes poker game, dropped their jaws at the sight of what had to be billions of ryo worth in diamonds. "I was hoping I could get in with this game." Tsunade eyed the young man in interest as the other gamblers conferred with each other. There was just something about him that made her feel wary. Like he was a hunter that was currently stalking its prey. The only question she could wonder was just who was his prey. After a few minutes, the men that had been conferring with each other nodded in agreement. "Alright kid, you're in. I just hope you won't mind it when we take all of those precious gems of yours." "Not at all," the blonde replied, sitting down at an empty seat at the table. The woman came up to his left and placed a hand on his shoulder, rubbing it up and down sensually. "If you can beat me, that is. Though I must warn you," his eyes flickered to Tsunade's, who flinched back. He grinned. "I've been told I have the devil's luck." Birth of the New Demon King. Back in Konoha, Teiwaya. Kin shouted as soon as she had fully entered the house that Minato had procured for his son. It was built into the side of the Hokage monument by being cut out by earth ninjutsu specialists. The entrance to the place was on the top of the mountain and descended to the actual building via stairway. The rooms were all well furnished with tasteful furniture that made the place look homey. Having never lived in a place like this, the Naruto clone decided his creator would probably like this kind of house. "Ha!" Teiwaya looked up at the shout and found herself being held in the vice grip of Kin. "Hey, what the fuck? Get off me. Get off." "Ha ha ha. I had wondered who they were talking about," Kin said with a joyous expression on her face. "I hadn't realized you left Odo." "I hadn't, at least not in the way you're thinking," Teiwaya said. She pointed over to Naruto. "Should head over there, captured me and the others and ack." Before she could say another word, a tail had wrapped around Teiwaya's throat and picked her up. Kin let out a scream while the red hat grabbed and clawed at the tail, only to stop when she came face to face with the other red hat in the room. "Now you listen here, you fucking twat." Kyuubi spat out as the girl in her grasp shook and shivered worse than a leaf being blown around in a hurricane. "If I ever hear you refer to Naruto-sama by any other name other than Naruto-sama, I will rip your fucking spine out of your back and use it to beat you to death. I will ensure that you suffer a fate so terrible that even a demon lord would shiver in fear. Do you understand?" Teiwaya's eyes bulged, not only due to lack of air, but also because of the killing intent Kyuubi was blasting her with. The younger red hat could literally see herself being ripped to shreds by this girl, being impaled by Kyuubi's tails before she was pulled apart. Several versions of her death flashed before her eyes, each one more gruesome than the next. So frightening were these deaths and the killing intent that came with it that Teiwaya actually lost control of her bladder. Kyuubi growled when the girl didn't answer her. She was just about to squeeze harder when a hand was placed on her shoulder. Turning her head, Kyuubi made to snarl at the person who dared touch her. However, when she saw that it was Naruto's clone, she just blinked. "Put her down, Kyuubi-hime," he said calmly. I really don't want to have to deal with any violence right now, especially since I would like her alive. Kyuubi's mouth opened in surprise. But she just called you dot. I know what she called me, Naruto said, interrupting the woman from talking. She called me that the moment she saw me enter her hospital room after the invasion. But that doesn't matter. What does is that if you keep putting out that much killing intent, the seals that are designed around this place to keep our energy levels concealed will collapse, and then all of Konoha will be in a panic. I have better control of my Yauki and killing intent than that, Kyuubi said with a huff. Despite her words, Kyuubi's power and killing intent began dwindling. But you do have a point. Best not leave things to chance. She then turned on the redhead still in the grasp of one of her tails and glared at her. However, you will refer to Naruto-sama as I told you. I will not have some pathetic ninja call my mate by such a disrespectful title. Do you understand? Teiwei quickly nodded, her eyes showing more fear than they ever had during her time working for Orochimaru. Good. Kyuubi set the girl down and then walked out of the room, likely to keep herself from blowing up. Kin ran up to her friend after the backlash from Kyuubi's killing intent that kept her in place had disappeared. Sorry about that, Naruto said, sighing a bit. She can be a bit of a handful. You telling me, Teiwei hacked, holding a hand to her abused throat as she coughed. Who the hell is that? And what was up with the tail? That would be Kyuubi, Naruto said, grinning at the reaction he got from Teiwei. Kin had been informed by Kyuubi herself a few days ago, so the news didn't shock her. And before you ask, no, she was not killed by my Tusan, she was sealed, and yes, she's out of the seal, and no, she will kill you, unless you piss her off. Stay on her good side, and you'll have nothing to worry about. Teiwei snapped her mouth shut, when the blonde answered the questions she had just been about to ask. Now down to why you're both here, Naruto said as he sat down on a couch. Kin and Teiwei took the other one, and Naruto noticed that Kin was sitting awfully close to the redhead. Guessing that she was still uncomfortable around men, he decided to get to the point. I want you both to work for me. Eh? Said Kin, scratching the back of her head. What do you mean, Naruto-sama? Teiwei gave Kin an incredulous stare, but the raven-haired girl ignored it as she looked at Naruto. What I mean, is I want you two, to work for me, he reiterated, pointing to each of them in turn. I doubt either of you know as Orochimaru was never one to trust others, but he was once the member of a group of S-rank criminals called Akatsuki. Apparently my Kyofu, Jiraiya, managed to find out about them while tracking his teammates' movements. We don't know exactly what their endgame is, but we know what they want. The 9 Demon Lords, or if you want to go by their human title, the Bijuu. Recently the original Naruto had a run-in with a few of the Akatsuki's members in a Tofujin guy. He managed to drive them off relatively easily. Well, if he beat them so fucking easily then, what the fuck does he need us for, asked Teiwei. I suggest you learn to watch your tongue, Kyuubi said as she re-entered the room. Teiwei paled as she turned her head to look at her fellow redhead, who happened to be glaring at her. Well, this Naruto may be a clone, I won't have you address him with such disrespect. You will curb your choice of words, or I will remove your tongue. Teiwei gulped, but nodded and vowed never to get on the redhead's bad side. The reason I need your help is because while I may be equipped to deal with the Akatsuki, none of the other Jinchuriki are, Naruto said. As I understand it, the members of Akatsuki are each chosen specifically because their powers give them a leg up over a Jinchuriki. What they lack in raw power they make up for in cunning, and even a Jinchuriki who has completely mastered their Bijuu can only use so much of it before it kills them through poisoning. Humans simply weren't made to handle the energy of a demon. What I need is for you two to be my eyes in the world outside of Hi-no-Kuni. Because of my growing reputation from the invasion, and now that my status as the Yondarume's son is known, traveling outside of Hi-no-Kuni will be difficult without getting into a lot of fights. And while I enjoy kicking ass as much as the next guy, I don't want to be responsible for slaughtering an entire brigade Iwa ninja, just because they wanted to get revenge on my father through killing me. So you want us to spy for you? Asked Kin. More like I want you to find all of the Jinchuriki, Naruto corrected. I want to know who they are, and if you can find out more about them as a person. What kind of people are they? What do they like? What do they hate? Anything you feel would prove useful. And what do we get out of this? Asked Teiwei with a skeptical gaze. How about your life? Said Kyuubi with a slight growl. Naruto put a hand in front of her, and she turned away with a huff. As much as I hate to admit it, Kyuubi is partially correct, Naruto said. Should you work for me, you will be allowed to live. However, as you know at least some of what I want, should you choose not to, I will either have to erase your memory, which is very hard to do, or kill you. Both Kin and Teiwei gulped. However, you will also gain benefits from working for me that won't get anywhere else. At those words, the two former Oda Kunoichi perked up. The first is specialized training that will put you on par with any Jonin in less than a year. The second is the freedom to move across the elemental nations without restrictions. The third is being under my protection from anyone who may seek to harm you, should you require it. How would we get that second one? Asked Kin. Getting unlimited freedom to move across the world was very hard to do. The reason was because each country required a different form of passport. Even a civilian can't cross the borders of one country and into another without the proper passports. It was even harder for a shinobi, if not outright impossible. Thanks to Jiraiya's spy network, we've been able to create passports for each nation, Naruto said. They're not fakes, but actual passports that were created by using a fourth party to buy them from each country, and a third party to send them through various channels and dead ends that make it impossible for anyone to realize you would have them. And because your faces are only known by Konoha and Oto, and neither of you are in the bingo book, it won't be very hard for either of you to slip past most patrols without a problem. What about Konoha though? Said Kin. They know our face. Naruto smirked. They do, but Teiwaya died in the hospital due to a heart failure caused by the curse seal being removed upon Orochimaru's death, and Yukin disappeared after the Chunin exams. No one knows where you went, and so assumed you died as well. While you two may look familiar, there's no possible way either of you could beat Tsuchikin or Teiwaya. I get where this is going, Teiwaya said slyly. You're a sneaky bastard, you know that. I do try. So do you two agree? Asked Kyuubi, interrupting them so they could get things underway. Not like we have much choice, Teiwaya said with a shrug. We're in. Naruto smiled. Alright, we'll begin training soon. I've actually got my old man in the process of building an underground training ground several miles outside of Konoha. When it is complete, that is where you will stay until your training is over. Why underground? Asked Kin. So no one can find you, of course, Naruto said with a grin, which turned decidedly evil a second later. Plus it would be a bitch if people started sensing Kyuubi's Yauki when she began training you. Both Kin and Teiwaya went pale as they turned to see Kyuubi giving them a smile that was so sweet they knew it couldn't be real. The terrifying moment was broken, however, when Minato, who had been silent up to this point, suddenly asked, "What did Kyuubi mean when she called you her mate?" Birth of the New Demon King. With Naruto. Tanzakugai. The smile never left Naruto's face as he was dealt another hand of cards. From the moment he had entered the room, the blonde Uzumaki had been dominating the poker match. Out of the 15 rounds that had passed, he had only lost 2, and now the stack of chips in his possession was the quadruple the amount it had been. 5 of the 7 original players had also been forced to fold, having lost all of their money, and in one case the clothes on his back. "I fold," the last male player besides him had said. He tossed his cards on the table and got up. "Looks like it's just you and me," Naruto said, turning to Tsunade with a smile. Behind him, Hana was practically hanging on him. She leaned over and kissed his cheek for good luck as the next match began. He couldn't help but think the Onizuka was playing her role perfectly. "So it seems," Tsunade commented wearily. Had it not been for the fact that it would ruin his poker face, Naruto would have laughed. Throughout the entire tournament he had been playing with her in small ways. Not to make her slip, Tsunade's luck was so bad she would never need it. But so that he could gauge her reactions, and he had to admit it was kind of fun watching her squirm. At first it was just light flirting, a compliment here, a slight innuendo there. It wasn't hard. Tsunade was a beautiful woman, at least when in her henge. She was a fairly tall, light-skinned woman with light brown eyes and straight blonde hair. Her hair is waist-length with shoulder-length bangs framing both sides of her face, and was tied in 2 loose ponytails in the back. She had a slender yet noticeably curvaceous frame, and if Jiraiya were to be believed, she had 106 cm breast circumference, which was the equivalent of a DD-sized chest. Possibly the oddest thing about her was the purple rhombus on the center of her forehead. Her outfit consisted of a grass-green robe with the kanji for gamble written in black on the back, inside a red circle. Underneath she wore a gray kimono-style blouse with no sleeves, held closed by a broad dark bluish-gray obi that matches her pants. Her blouse was closed quite low, revealing her sizable cleavage. She had unopened toed sandals with high heels and polish on both her fingernails and toenails. She also had on a soft pink lipstick. And finally, Naruto saw the Shodai Hokage's necklace in clear view on her chest. Beauty aside, Naruto wasn't dumb enough to say anything of an overtly sexual nature. He knew she hated perverts thanks to Jiraiya, so he made sure to keep his comments low-key. Not enough to insult and just enough to fluster and entice her. It helped that he knew she found him attractive. He would have to thank Kyuubi for helping him understand women when he got home. "I would like to up the wages, Tsunade," Naruto said as he placed 2 cards from his hand face down on the table. The dealer gave him 2 more cards and he looked at them with a slight smile. "Never one to back down from a high-stakes gamble?" Tsunade asked. "I take it, you have something special in mind." Naruto watched her take 3 cards from the dealer with a smile. "You could say that. Should you win this next hand, I will offer to pay off every single one of your debts, and you won't owe me a dime." Tsunade's eyes widened. Her debt had to be running somewhere around 2 billion ryo by now. Only a daimyo possibly had enough money to pay off that kind of debt. For anyone to say they would pay off that much of her debt, especially in the nonchalant tone he had used, was inconceivable. She quickly regained her composure. "And if I lose?" The smile Naruto gave her was considerably predatory as he said, "If you lose, you will come back to Konoha with me." Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want a next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the other videos that I have created, and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.